Hi guys, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have an almost 2.5-year-old named Kylie and I have a 5-month-old baby named Mia. Typically in a Montessori home, what you're really going to be focusing on is practical life activities. Things that you can do around your house every single day just to easily involve your baby or toddler. In a traditional Montessori classroom, sandpaper letters are not typically introduced until they've hit primary, which is 3 to 6 years old. But sometimes you have a toddler on your hands who is expressing an interest in the letters of the alphabet before they've ever even gone to school. So if you're a Montessori at home parent who is looking for a way to teach the letters of the alphabet to your child, then you've come to the right place because that is exactly what today's video is all about. So from one busy parent to another, today I'm going to share with you how to use sandpaper letters to introduce your child to the letters of the alphabet. So in a Montessori environment, children are not actually taught the letters of the names of the alphabet first. They're taught the sounds of the letters of the alphabet, which is otherwise known as phonics. And what I mean by that is you don't teach your child, this is the letter A. You teach them, this is A. And there's a really good reason for this. 80% of the time, the phonetic sound of a letter is used when we're speaking. There's an old quote that goes, if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for life. And if you think about it, when it comes to reading, this quote perfectly describes why you would want to teach letter sounds. If a child has a word in front of them that they've never seen before, but they know the sounds of each individual letter, they'll be able to sound out that word all on their own and figure out what the word says. This is in stark contrast to teaching a child sight words, where basically, yes, they can tell you exactly what the word says, but they don't know why the word sounds the way it does. So they ultimately end up becoming limited to only the sight words that they've memorized. And when it comes to writing, 93% of the time we use the lowercase form of a letter. So in Montessori, not only is the most common phonetic sound of the letter taught first, but they're also taught to focus on lowercase letters initially. It's not until later on, until after they've mastered the lowercase letters and their common phonetic sounds, that things like capital letters, letter names, and the less common sounds for some of the letters are actually taught. And you'll actually hear from some Montessori teachers sometimes that by the end of the school year, children have just intuitively picked up all of the capital letters by themselves. So in a Montessori environment, letter sounds are taught using something called sandpaper letters. And all they are little wooden tablets that have the shape of each letter printed on top of them in a very fine textured sandpaper. Again, the letters that are introduced first are lowercase letters. The idea behind sandpaper letters is that it provides a multi-sensory approach for learning the letter sounds. Not only are they simultaneously seeing and hearing the letter, but they're also using their fingertips to trace the letter, which essentially is helping them to build muscle memory so that they know how to write that letter later on. Now, when it comes to teaching the sounds of these letters, there's actually a very specific method in which this is done. The first thing to consider is the order of the letters. Letters are not taught all at once. They're taught in small groups that enable the child to construct as many words as possible from each grouping of letters. Depending on which organization or school you ask, they all seem to have different combinations of letters that they will use. So I will leave a couple of links below for you guys so that you can check out what some of the popular orders of letters are, and you can decide for yourself which one you'd like to start with. Letters are typically only taught about 3 or 4 letters at a time. It's only once your child has mastered that first grouping of letters that you even want to consider moving on to the next grouping of letters. Otherwise, you might introduce too many at once and ultimately end up confusing and frustrating your child. Now, when it comes to actually teaching the letter sounds, in a Montessori environment, something called the 3-period lesson is the method you're going to use. I believe I did mention a little bit about a 3-period lesson in my toddler language cards video, which if you have not seen that yet, I will link it up above for you guys. It's another really great way to introduce language to your baby or toddler. But here's the basic gist of how a 3-period lesson works. In period 1, ideally you'll be sitting somewhere with your child that has a flat surface. You'll have your group of sandpaper letters with you, either 3 or 4 of them. You'll pick one of the letters to start with and place it in front of your child. You'll then use 2 fingers to trace over the sandpaper letter while saying the sound of the letter at the same time. Then you'll pass the sandpaper letter to your child for them to have a turn. If they don't seem to quite understand the concept of tracing the letter yet, then you can hand over hand help to guide their hand in the beginning. You will then repeat this process for each of the remaining letters in the small group that you've chosen. Once you've gotten through all of the letters, it is then time to move on to period 2. For period 2, all you need to do is lay out the letters in front of your child. Choose one letter in your mind and ask your child to show it to you. So for example, can you show me t? Or can you show me s? Each time you ask your child to show you one of the letters, they should simply point to it or touch it lightly. This is typically the period that you're going to spend the longest amount of time in because you really want your child to be able to build up that repetition and eventually actually master knowing what each of the letters not only looks like, but what it sounds like. It is only once you are absolutely positive that your child knows each of the letters in that group that you'll move on to period 3. And period 3 is kind of like the testing level. What you'll do is pick up one letter at a time or point to one letter at a time and ask your child, what is this? And they should look at you and be able to tell you the sound of the letter. So that is a 3-period lesson in a nutshell. A 3-period lesson is actually used to teach all kinds of things in a Montessori environment, letter sounds included. Okay, so I'm a little closer to you guys now because my daughter Mia just woke up from her nap and now she is nursing. So if you see her little hand popping into the frame, that's who it is. But this morning I did have an opportunity to sit down with my daughter Kylie while Mia was napping and go through an entire 3-period lesson with her using her very first grouping of sandpaper letters that she's ever seen. She has only seen these sandpaper letters a few times before I recorded this session. And as you'll see in just a minute, it seems that she's picked them up pretty quickly. This is, can you say? This is ah. Can you say ah? Can you say ah? Ah. Okay. Down. This is Can you say This is t. Now you try.
I do with one finger. And you do with 2 fingers.
That's right. Can you say t? Okay. Can you show me? Can you show me? Can you show me t? And can you show me ah?
Ah.
Ah. Okay. What is this?
Ah.
Ooh, ah. Okay. What is this? What is this? What is this? So as you saw for yourself just now, she is definitely enjoying using the sandpaper letters to learn the sounds of the alphabet. And even though I feel like she has kind of already mastered these first 4 letters, I do plan to wait a little bit longer before I introduce the next set of letters to her. I want to make sure that she has a little bit more repetition and definitely confidence in her mastery before we move on. One last thing that I want to touch on is where to get sandpaper letters. The ones that I'm using with Kylie that you saw in the video today are ones that I recently purchased on Amazon, and I will leave a link below if you're interested in checking them out. However, they can get a little expensive the higher quality you go and depending on where you purchase them from. So if you want to do sandpaper letters, but you don't necessarily want to make the investment in purchasing an actual set of sandpaper letters, then I have good news for you because there are all manners of tutorials on DIY versions of sandpaper letters all over the internet. There are some tutorials that will show you how to use glue and just sprinkling it with sand to make your own sandpaper. Alternatively, you can also cut the letters out yourself out of real sandpaper. But I've also seen lots of tutorials where people are cutting the letters out of felt and mounting those onto index cards or actual pieces of wood. And the easiest route that you can take is simply glitter glue on an index card. And honestly, when all is said and done, it doesn't really matter what your sandpaper letters are made out of, as long as they're sticking to the principles behind it. You're trying to provide a multi-sensory, tactile approach to being able to feel the letters. So as long as your child can do that with whatever set you've created for him or her, then those will work just fine. One thing I would like to point out for any strict Montessorians out there is that typically cursive letters are introduced before print letters. And the reason for that is because as the child learns the individual standalone cursive letters, they're very easily able to connect them together once they actually start learning how to write in cursive. However, in a home setting, I really feel that as a parent, if you're not using cursive yourself and you're not able to model that for your child, then there's nothing wrong with starting with a set of print letters. So although I did mention this earlier on in the video, I did want to touch on it one more time. I know a lot of you as parents out there are probably now wondering, wow, this is great, when should I start? And again, in a Montessori environment, it's not typically introduced until at least the age of 3. So if your child at home is not even 3 years old yet and they don't really seem interested in learning the sounds of the letters, then I wouldn't worry about it. But if your child does seem interested and ready to learn the letters of the alphabet and you're wanting to do it at home with Montessori principles in mind, then this this is the route that you're going to take. And of course, you can always use language objects and language cards to begin early language development with a child of any age. If you guys have any questions about the Sandpaper Letters or a 3-period lesson, then leave me a comment down below and I'd love to chat with you guys about it. And if you liked today's video, then please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Just in case you are new to my channel, I did want to let you know that this video is part of a larger series called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori philosophies at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, then you might consider subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss another video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.